Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today at WorldWide HealthStaff Solutions. My name is Amy Carr. I'm the Vice President of Recruiting, and I am joined today by Kelsey Robinson, who is one of our senior recruiters. And we are here to answer the top 10 questions that the WorldWide HealthStaff recruiters hear on a regular basis. We are also happy to take additional questions. If you post them in the comments, we will be very, very happy to answer them after we get through the top 10 questions. And we'd love to hear where you are watching from today. So we are going to take questions directly from the WorldWide HealthStaff recruiting team. And the very first question is going to come from Carl Dallas. Maybe Kelsey, Carl's having some technical difficulties because I don't think we can hear his question. But I think his question was.
Which exam is accepted in which states? And what do I do if my English exam isn't accepted in that state by that employer?
Oh, that's a great question. I think for the recruiting team hears this one a lot. So what English exams are accepted in what state, and what happens if your English exam is not accepted in the state of your employer?
That's a super great question, and one you should really think about before your interview process. Each state accepts different English exams for licensure endorsement. The TOEFL is accepted in every single state. Now there's different scores that are accepted, so talk with your recruiter about this. If you plan to take IELTS, MET, OET, or PTE, confirm with your recruiter before interviewing that state accepts that English exam. However, if the state doesn't accept the exam you want, talk with your recruiter about this. We don't want you to miss out on a great hospital just because of an English exam. We have a really great coach and a coaching system to help you take the English exam that's required, and so we can assist you with that process. English exams also expire, so we recommend taking the exam after you find your employer.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point. I think there's a lot of anxiety around taking and passing an English exam. And I think there's a lot of people who have already taken an English exam and may feel like the English exam they took was the best one. One of the things about the immigration journey is that it's really personalized. And so what might be the best English exam for your friend may not be the right one for you, or may not get you to your dream job. So I think really think carefully about it. Plug for Carrie's Corner. Carrie's on Facebook Live on WorldWide HealthStaff on Thursdays. She is our ESL coach, and she will help with resources to get through all different exams. I think, like Kelsey mentioned, really important, there is a time limit on your exam. And also your visa screen can expire as well. And so we want to make sure that we're helping you take that at the right time so that it's good all the way through if possible, all the way through your journey. Okay, great. Let's go to the next question. I think the next question is going to come to us from recruiter Ariel Waters.
How is my salary calculated, and can it be negotiated?
Oh, that's an important question. The question is, how is your salary calculated and can it be negotiated? That's a really popular question.
Super important question. Salaries are actually calculated based on two things. One, the prevailing wage of the location that you're interviewing for. So this is determined by where your hospital is located. It's not necessarily state specific. It's more specific to the exact location that your hospital is located. And then the other thing that they take into consideration is your years of experience. So it's super important to have all of your experience listed on your resume when you apply so that you can get the best possible salary for that location. You're going to be paid at the same rate as the other employees of that hospital, which is the benefit of direct hire. You'll be an employee of that hospital directly. So you'll have the same opportunities that all of their other employees have, including the same salary amount. Each wage is carefully calculated by the HR team at that hospital and then added to your offer letter before it comes to you. In U.S. employment, it's really important for all employees to be treated equally. And so for that reason, and because your skills and education were taken into consideration, most employers will not negotiate their salary. Now, if you have concerns about maybe you think your salary is too low or you think it's not enough to live in that area, this is a great thing to talk with your recruiter about. Your recruiter has experience and knowledge of cost of living in a lot of different areas in the U.S., and so they will tell you honestly, here's what type of expenses you think you will have. Here's what the cost of living looks like in that area. And is this a good salary for that location? It's super important to include your recruiter in this conversation if you have questions or concerns.
Yeah, I think, and we'll answer, I think, most questions at the end, but Simon just asked a really good question. After agreeing on an offer and waiting 2 years because of retrogression, is it possible to ask for an increase in salary? I think, yeah, that's a great question. I think most of our employers will recalculate your salary at the reconfirmation letter, so right at your embassy interview. And what they are doing is are making sure that the salary that they have given to you reflects the current wages that are happening like in the system. For instance, one of our employers had a system-wide salary increase. And so for that system, every single person who comes through to embassy interview will get an increase because the whole system had an increase. So your experience and education will now merit a different salary. So I think because of the things that Kelsey mentioned, that it's really important to have a fair wage in the U.S., super important. That's one of the things is that they will relook at all of your experience and education to make sure to match you with the right salary at that time.
Amy, I see another question that kind of applies to this of somebody asking about a salary range for a specific department. This is really hard to tell in advance because every hospital calculates their wages with their own calculation. And it also is not usually calculated until after your interview. So it's hard for your recruiter to tell you in advance the exact salary that you're going to get. They might be able to give you a range so you have an idea of what to expect, but it's not typical that we can tell you in advance exactly how much a specific unit is going to offer.
Yeah, and I think very different than like a travel nurse agency, where you go to work directly for the agency and they would say they're going to probably pay you at the prevailing wage rate. Each system and facility will calculate an individual wage specifically for you based on your skills and the range because it's direct hire. So that's one of the big differences.
Absolutely.
That was great. Okay. So next question number 3, comes from one of our longest recruiters, Scarlett Pardue.
How long does it usually take to get an interview, and what if you don't have any openings for my specialty?
Oh, that's a great question. So how long does it take to get an interview, and what if you don't have any interview openings for my specialty?
Great question. The first thing to think about with this question is that it really depends on the type of specialty that you're working in. I would say on average, it takes about a month to get an interview. For areas that are in high demand, this would be like med-surg units or long-term care facilities. We probably can help you get interviewed quicker than that. If you're working in a more specialized unit, it'll take us a little bit longer to find that perfect opening for you. But our recruiters will make sure that you're on the wait list for those openings. We'll continue to stay in contact with you to help you find the right opening for you. You're required to work in the type of unit that you're interviewing for. So if you work in ICU, we should help you interview for ICU. If you work in OR, we should help you interview for OR. So that's why sometimes it can take a little bit longer. Now, if you are really eager to begin the process, you want to start right away, and you're willing to switch units at your current hospital. So let's say there's an opportunity for you to move into a med-surg unit where you're working currently. This is a great way to help you get interviewed a little bit faster if you switch units, and then your recruiter would be able to match you with, like I said, a med-surg opening or maybe a long-term care opening that would be a good fit for you. It's just super important to stay in touch with your recruiter. It's also important to look at all of the options that we have. We might not always have a state available that you're looking for or an exact city that you're looking for, but that's where your recruiter can come in and share with you why another option might be a great fit for you. So we recommend that you remain flexible in what you're looking for as far as a hospital goes, so that our team can really help match you with your perfect hospital.
Yeah, and I think a couple of things just in terms of trends for international nurses. Like one, the demand in the U.S. remains high and has probably never been higher. So there's huge demand for international nurses to come to the U.S. But it was also an incredible year in NCLEX passing for international nurses. So there's more than 50,000 nurses internationally that took and passed the NCLEX in 2023. So there's a lot of amazing, talented international nurses that are looking for an employer right now. And so I think flexibility is important. I think our job is to help you find the right interview on the right job, and for you to do an awesome job on your first interview so that you land the job that you want. But I think we also want to make sure that we're helping you, I think as Kelsey said, consider all the options. One thing that I would recommend is we do webinars to focus on different states. And so check out our YouTube page to see some past webinars about states that you may not have thought about living in, but that would be a really great place to raise a family, that are really safe, that have a great cost of living. Iowa, North Carolina, we are here in North Carolina. I think it's the best state. But there's lots of really great states to choose from. So be on the lookout for more information, and just learn about some of the different options that might be out there. Okay, our next question comes from recruiter James Cates.
What are the requirements to interview?
Yeah, so I think that what are the qualifications and requirements to interview? Kelsey?
So almost all of our openings require at least 2 years of current bedside experience. All of our openings require NCLEX for RN positions. And then some employers might have more specific qualifications. They want you to have worked with certain types of patients or certain types of equipment. And so your recruiter can review your resume to make sure that you're a good fit for these openings. This is one reason it's super important to have all your experience on your resume and detailed what you do day to day in those units, or if there's different types of equipment that you work with. Now, if you just started as a nurse and you still want to apply, you can talk with our recruiters to see what the next steps look like for you. But typically, most of our openings are going to require about 2 years of bedside experience. This means you need to be currently working in a bedside nursing role. If you're not currently in a bedside nursing role, but you have previous nursing experience, as long as you plan to go back to bedside nursing and you return to a nursing role, then our recruiters should be able to help get you interviewed. These qualifications depend on the employer, of course, but our recruiters are there to make sure that you get matched with the right employer.
And I think the different, I think because different employers require different experience, sometimes like you may qualify for this opportunity, but perhaps not this one. And a recruiter is the best person to help you with that. I think what our employers have learned, especially the ones who have partnered with us for quite some time, is that nurses that have really strong bedside experience and really good RN experience in their home country, when they get to the US, they transition really well into the facility. And there's so many different things that you have to think about when you transition to a new country that it's really nice when performing your job specifically isn't that hard part, and that you're able to excel very quickly right there. And then the other things that you need to transition, how, the driving, the street signs, grocery stores, those sorts of things in your everyday life are the part that you have to focus on transitioning. Okay, what should I tell? Oh, sorry, from Kira. Let's listen to Kira ask this question. Kira Franklin.
What should I tell my recruiter about before I interview?
Yeah, what should we tell your recruiter about before the interview, Kelsey?
Absolutely. So it's super important that your recruiter has all the information that they need from you before interviewing. Of course, this includes your resume, making sure that you've passed the NCLEX, the states that you're interested in, but there's also some things that maybe you haven't thought about before that it's important to talk with your recruiter about. The first is if you have another contract with a different employer or another visa process ongoing. It can be challenging and sometimes not possible if you have another ongoing visa to get employer sponsorship. So make sure that your recruiter knows if you have another contract with an employer that's sponsoring your visa, or maybe a different type of visa ongoing. Maybe you have a family petition or a fiance visa or some other type of visa that you're in process with. Make sure your recruiter knows this. It won't always disqualify you, but your recruiter really needs to know this information because we don't want you to get far in the immigration process and then run into some issues because you have another visa process ongoing.
Yeah.
The next thing that you should make sure your recruiter knows is if you've ever been denied a visa. This includes things like a B1 visa, a visitor visa, a J visa, if you've tried to come to the US before, even if you've tried to come to the US as a student before, maybe on an F1 visa and had issues with that, make sure your recruiter knows about this as well. The same thing applies here. It won't always disqualify you, but we need to know all of this information before we help you get hired so that you won't have any road bumps in the process and that everything will move really smoothly for you. We want to make sure that your immigration process moves as smoothly and as quickly as possible. If you've ever overstayed in the US on a visitor visa, you need to let your recruiter know about this as well. Overstaying in the US can have implications on future immigration processes. So this is something to keep in mind if you currently have a visitor visa and plan to visit the US before beginning your immigration process. Make sure that you only stay during the allotted amount of time and don't violate the terms of your visa in any way. These, of course, can cause problems later on in immigration processes. Now, if you or a family member of yours has a criminal background, this is something important to let your recruiter know about as well. It's something that we'll need to talk with our immigration team about just to make sure that it won't cause any issues for you in your immigration process. And also, if there's a specific English exam that you feel that you have to take, like we talked about before, many English exams are only accepted in certain states. So if you are only planning on taking maybe PTE or OET, make sure your recruiter knows that so we can pair you with states that only accept those exams. These are really important things to let your recruiter know about. Other things that you might want to let them know about is if you plan to move to a different country during your immigration process, if you're switching units, if you have any big family life changes coming up, like a baby or getting married. Those are all important things to make sure that your recruiter knows about. Amy, anything that I'm missing that you should tell your recruiter ahead of time?
No, I would just also say that important to tell your recruiter, because I think not that your recruiter knows all the answers, but we are lucky enough to be right down the hall from our legal team who do know all the answers. And so we can make sure that if there's extra documents or other things to consider, that we're able to talk to you about that upfront. But if any of these things happen during your journey, super important that you then let your case manager know immediately so that we're able to, to connect with the attorneys, make any adjustments that we need to do to your case. And then if you want to change a job or anything, it's always a good idea to ask before you take any steps, because we would hate for anything silly really to derail a journey that you have invested so much time and so many resources in. Okay, so our next question is going to come from Kaylee Horman.
If the recruiter schedules my interview, how do I prepare for it?
Oh, that's a great question. And just a plug for Kelsey. Kelsey did another whole webinar that you can find on our YouTube channel about how to prepare for an interview. But why don't you just give us a couple of tips?
Absolutely. So of course, check out our YouTube. Like Amy said, we have some really great webinars on there. Think about the technology, the cases and challenges you use in your everyday RN experience. Our interviewers want to hear detailed examples for you when you interview. They don't want to hear general of here's how I handle things every day. They want you to say, here's a situation that I had and here's how I handled it. This will help them really see that you're a good fit for their unit and that you're going to be the right hire for their hospital. They really like to hear about times that you use problem-solving skills, times that you overcame difficult situations, and especially times that you worked with your team at the hospital to solve problems. Teamwork is super important in hospitals here in the US, and it will really show them that you're able to adapt to their team environment. It's also really important to research the employer before interviewing. Check out their website, ask your recruiter for resources about them. What our interviewers love to hear is that you're interested in their hospital, you want to build your career there, and this is somewhere that you really want to move to. So researching ahead of time is super important. Now, if you need extra support support and tips for your interview, our recruiters are each equipped with lots of resources. They have checklists that they can give you to help prepare. They have videos they can send you that you can watch, other documents. Our recruiters will even meet with you and do interview prep to help you prepare for your interview. So if you need that extra support for your interview, maybe you're feeling a little bit nervous, work with your recruiter to get those nerves shaken out before the big day. We understand that this can be really nervous, especially if it's your first interview with a U.S. employer, and we want to make sure that you have all the tools that you need to really be successful in your interview. Now, if you do interview and you have some challenges, or maybe you don't get a job offer that first time, that's okay. Your recruiter can keep working with you to improve your interview skills for that next time around. So don't get discouraged, especially if you felt like you really struggled during your first interview. We have lots of support for you.
Yeah, and I think one thing to think about is any nurse that goes through this journey, there's a lot of time and resources invested, but I think employers, it's the same for them. So they have needs right now, and they're going to wait 2 years for a nurse to arrive and begin working. And they've also invested in the cost of the sponsorship. And so I think that's one of the things is they want to make sure that they are selecting folks that are not only going to be a great fit and like great nurses that are going to do an awesome job, but I think it's super important to really think about how the employer views you and how important it is for them to see that you are invested in their mission and what they are doing. I think it's also really important to make sure that you understand the position that you're applying for, especially if you're currently working in something maybe a little bit different. It's a really good idea to think about before the interview how past experience you have will translate into this role. I think one other thing employers don't necessarily want to hear if you're interviewing for a med-surg position today, that you want to move into an emergency department position as soon as possible, because this person who is interviewing you, that's making the hiring decisions, will then have to fill that spot again. So I think they want you to be invested in them as an organization, but also in the department and unit that you're interviewing for as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, the next question is from Kelsey to Kelsey.
Can't wait to answer my own question. What should I do if I get a job offer, but I have questions or concerns about the terms?
Yeah, I think great question, and super important question, right? Like there's so much online about this. What do you do if you have a job offer, but you have questions or concerns, or maybe just don't really understand all the terms in the job offer?
Absolutely. There are several different things that you can do. We recommend doing all of these different things if you have questions about your offer. The first thing that I'm always going to advise you is to reach out to your recruiter. As soon as you get that job offer, you start having questions, send an email to your recruiter. They're going to make sure that you have the resources that you need. If you have questions about things that aren't included in the offer, maybe about their PTO policy or benefits or things like that aren't typically included in an offer because they can change from time to time, your recruiter can send that information to you. If you have questions about shift differentials or things like that, your recruiter can send those to you as well. If you have concerns about the salary or the location, your recruiter would be happy to schedule a call with you and talk through that process with you of what that looks like. They can also answer any questions that you might have about the unit specifically, about your contract as well. The second thing that we advise is to talk with friends and family about your offer. Make sure that this is someplace that your family wants to move to. If you have other friends that have gone through the process, talking with them about the terms of your contract can be helpful as well. And then the third thing that we really recommend is do research on this hospital. Research the hospital, research their mission statement, research the nurses that have worked there and what other people have to say about this hospital. All of those things can really help you to have a well-rounded perspective of your offer. One thing that I will say is that if you have questions about benefits or salary, make sure you view the offer as a whole, not just the salary amount or not just the benefits. It's really important to make sure that that salary is good for that location. They offer good benefits. Maybe they have a sign-on bonus or continuing education that they offer to their nurses. So make sure that you view your offer as a whole package and not just that salary amount that's listed there.
Yeah, and I think one thing about contracts and offer letters is, one, it is important. And if you don't understand or you're not comfortable with something that is in your offer letter, do not sign it until you are. And I think that's super important. I think something else just to know about contracts in the US is that there are so many employment laws in the US. And there's a lot of litigation around employment and fair employment, making sure that employees are working in a safe, healthy environment and, for all kinds of things. And so there are some things I think in the US that you don't see in offer letters that you might see in other countries because it is regulated. And I think your recruiter can help you navigate that too, or anyone who's great at US contracts that you know in your life. So I think that's really important to know that sometimes there are differences like that. And then sometimes there's just language that you might not be familiar with, but please make sure to ask. Like, don't sign something and just not be sure. I do think sometimes we will get requests from nurses to make changes to an offer letter. And I think for many of the same reasons that most companies won't make amendments to wages, everyone gets the same offer letter. And so oftentimes they won't make an amendment to include something in an offer letter. Anything else to add to that?
I think the only thing I would say is that if you have questions or concerns about your offer and you're not really sure about it, the worst thing you can do is stop responding to your recruiter, right? Your recruiter is there to help you and support you. Even if you want to decline that offer or you want to talk about other opportunities, let your recruiter know. We don't want you to get an offer and then have questions about it or concerns about it and then just not reach out to anybody. We want to hear from you. If there's an issue with the offer, you have concerns or questions, we want to know what those are so that we can best support you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe one question just came in about sign-on bonus. When do you get sign-on bonus? Generally speaking, that is a great question that is answered in your offer letter. Every employer is different. And because this is a direct hire agency, how you get paid, what you get paid, and when any bonuses occur comes really at the employer, like based on the employer's timeline. Sometimes sign-on bonuses are paid in the first paycheck. Sometimes bonuses are paid at different increments after 6 months or a year. And sometimes they're paid on different timetables. And so in an offer letter, that is where you will find all of that detailed information. And then someone just mentioned, if you sign an offer and you don't want it, what can be done? You can obviously decline your offer, depending on what point of the process you're in. It really, there's different things that could happen if you have a petition that's already approved or those sorts of things. I think we mentioned that there are so many international nurses that passed the NCLEX in 2023. We don't have the numbers yet for 2024, but we anticipate that the beginning of 2024, there's lots of passers as well. And so I think what we would say is try very hard to make all the considerations, start even before interview. Start talking to your friends and family about the hospital, the location, before you even get an offer. And then once, before you sign your offer, be as sure as possible. There are always things that happen in life. Like we can't, if we could figure that out, we'd make $1 million. There are certainly things that happen in life that would make things different. But that's a really great question for your case manager, depending on where you are in the process. Okay, so the next question comes from Tyson Winters.
How long will it take to file my I-140 application, and will it be filed with premium processing?
Great question. I've seen a couple of questions about this come in. Mm-hmm. So how long will it take to file the I-140 application, and will it be filed with premium processing?
Absolutely. We get this question all the time because it's a super, super important one, right? It usually takes about 30 to 60 days to have your I-140 filed. Now, keep in mind, like Amy mentioned earlier, every immigration process is unique and depends on your situation. And there's 3 different parties that are involved in making sure your I-140 is filed. The first is you. So making sure that your documents are returned to your case manager on time, everything is correct and submitted in the proper order is super important. The second is the employer, right? The employer needs to make sure that all of their documents have been submitted. We have everything that we need, and that's why our great legal team works on getting all of these things in advance for you. And then the third is the government, and we can't always control the changes that they make or their timelines, but as long as we can get everything submitted from our end, then the government will process things on their end. Now, the second part of this question is, will it be filed with premium processing? In the past, we've had a lot of employers that have covered premium processing. Right now, it's not advised by our attorneys to pay for premium processing because it won't impact the overall timeline of your immigration process. I've seen a couple questions about that timeline in the chat. Right now, the expected timeline for your immigration process is 18 to 24 months. So premium processing is not having a great impact on the overall timeline of your process, which is why the employers are not currently covering it. Now, if you decide that you have to have premium processing, you really need to have it for your case, you can talk with your case manager about the options of paying for it. But right now, our employers are not covering the premium processing.
And I think the exception to that would be if you have a priority date that's current.
Correct. Yeah.
Then that's certainly, that makes sense. I think otherwise the timeline would be the same whether you paid for it or not. So you can totally pay for it, but we would probably recommend that you save that money and put it in your account for when you arrive in the U.S. And I think, one thing about I-140 applications and, is just like every government, sometimes the U.S. government makes changes. And then when that change happens, sometimes we have to take steps, or employers have to take steps in order to then be ready to file. For instance, the signature form was changed by USCIS earlier this year. They did not even give 7 days notice. So then our legal team had to go to each signatory at each employer and get them to update the signature page to go with all of the petitions. So sometimes there are things like that happen, which are totally normal. And we have a great team of folks that work with our clients and our legal team to help work on all of those things. Okay, our next question is from Jessiana.
Who can I bring with me on my visa petition?
Great question. Who can I bring with me on my visa petition?
Absolutely. So if you're married, if you're legally married, your spouse can come with you, be added to your visa petition. And if you have children that are yours either biologically or legally adopted, they can also be added to your visa petition. Keep in mind, this is for children under the age of 21 years old. So if you have a child that's around that age or close to that age, make sure to talk to your recruiter to see, that they can be added to their visa petition. And your spouse and your children will receive green cards if you're going through the EB-3 processing. Now we get a lot of questions from people that say, like, I'm not married and I don't have kids. Could I bring my parents instead, or could I bring my siblings instead? Right now, the only way that the process works is that if they are your legal dependent, so that would be your spouse or your children. So you can't add other family members to your visa petition at this time.
Yeah, so I think, tell your spouse they need to be extra nice to you for this 2 years during this process, because you get to decide who goes on the petition with you.
Right.
So you can have them, but you don't have to.
One question that we get too is, I'm single now, but I'm planning on getting married in the next couple of months. Or what if I have a baby before I arrive in the US? And those are super great questions. You can add the person to your visa petition up until your embassy interview. Of course, we recommend you do it as soon as possible because that will make your immigration process much, much smoother. But that's why it's important to keep your case manager notified of any big life changes, like we mentioned earlier. So if you're having a child, if you're planning on getting married, if you're getting divorced, those are all really important things to let your case manager know about so that we can make sure that your application doesn't have any speed bumps or any issues.
And I think one great question related to this, like what if my husband and I are both a nurse? Do we need to do the same process in the Philippines to work in the US since one of us will be the dependent? I think great question. So the answer is you don't have to. Right? Like one of you could get a job and be sponsored, and then the other one could be the dependent. Or you could both try to get a job with the same employer, and then you would both be eligible for a plane ticket. You would both be eligible for the relocation if there's a sign-on bonus. And that just might make your life transition to the US a little bit more comfortable. But it's really up for you and your spouse to decide, and really if there's a job that's appropriate for both of you at the same location.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It really depends on the type of unit that you and your spouse are working in. Let's say you're both working in med surge, then, great. We'd be able to get you probably both at the same hospital. If one of you is working in, ICU and the other one is working in NICU, we might not be hiring for both of those same units at the same hospital. So if you've applied with a spouse, or even if you've applied with a friend and you want to end up at the same location, make sure you tell your recruiter about this. We want to make sure to help get you paired with the right hospital, but also with the right groups. It's super important to be able to have community when you arrive here in the US. And so if you can do the process with a spouse, or even you have friends that are coming to the same location, we want to know in advance so that we can help you get with the right employer, and so that you have that community here in the US.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Question number 10. This is from our Director of Recruiting, Brian Barry.
Can you tell me more about the teams that will support me through my immigration process at WorldWide HealthStaff?
Yeah, I think Kelsey was just talking about support in the U.S. What about the teams at Worldwide that support all the way through the process? Who here helps you?
Absolutely. I think one of the most amazing things about WorldWide HealthStaff Solutions is that you will have dedicated support every single step of the way. From the day that you apply on our website, you'll be assigned a recruiter. Your recruiter will support you throughout the recruitment process. So that includes reviewing your resume, talking with you about questions that you have, helping you interview, and answering questions about your job offer. And then once you sign a job offer, you will be immediately transferred to a case manager. And so then you'll have support from our case management team up until your arrival to the U.S. Now, there's several other teams that are going to come into play during your immigration process. One of these is our legal team. We have an in-house legal department that will support your immigration process. Another one of these we mentioned earlier is our English support with Carrie Cooper that will provide you coaching and training for your English exam. Another one of these teams is our licensure team. They'll help you be able to get endorsed to whatever state that you're going to. So if you got hired in a state that you didn't take your NCLEX in, we support you through that process as well. Another team that we have to support you is our relocation team. They're going to start working with you prior to your arrival. They're the ones that are going to help you book your flights and make sure, all your luggage gets here safely, that you have someplace to live when you get here, that somebody's picking you up from the airport, all of those super important things. And then we also have a retention team that's going to check in with you after you've started working, making sure that everything's going smoothly, that you're transitioning well. So we have a dedicated team member that's with you every step of the way. Amy, are there other teams that step into play, or other steps?
I mean, I think those are all the teams. I think we also have just a set of resources through our website, through webinars that we do like this. We try really hard to do our best job to keep everyone informed, which is why if you haven't, you should like and follow us on Facebook so that you keep updated on all the events that we do. But we want to make sure that we are giving you all of the things that we can to help with your success. It's really important to us. And I think we also have a ton of partnerships outside of just Worldwide to help in your transition and with things in the US, like buying a car and using credit. We've recently done a financial wellness webinar, and we have another one coming up. So we're really trying to make sure that we are able to help in every different way. So I think if there's something that you feel like you're not getting, please talk to your recruiter or your case manager, because we really want to make sure that we're able to help you. There's some things we can't control. We can't control the government. We can't control processing time. We can't control the NBC, but we can make sure that we are helping you with every single resource along the way, so that when you get to each of these milestones and you get through them, that you're prepared and ready for the next step.
Absolutely.
All right, that's the top 10 questions. There are some questions that have come into the chat, and a couple of them that we're going to answer. Some of them are about just the process. So someone asked about NBC, and does NBC wait until your party date is current to DQ? They do not. But the NBC doesn't necessarily process things in the order that they receive them either. So they're also not processing them in the order of your priority date. So just so you know that too. But they will continue to process. They will continue to process, and you will get DQ'd before your priority date is current. There's lots of questions about CNAs, and we are not right now hiring really for any nursing assistants. We have thousands of applicants that are on a waiting list in line. The amount of time it's taking right now for a nursing assistant to get to the U.S. is about 4 years. And so I think what I would encourage for everyone who is a nurse that hasn't taken the NCLEX would be really to consider studying and potentially taking the NCLEX, because there are so many opportunities for NCLEX passing nurses. And also coming soon, there's going to be a new NCLEX center that's going to open up in Kenya. And so hopefully there will be more access as well. So that's my, we're not hiring right now currently for nurse aides. There is no age limit in the U.S. We do not discriminate based on religion, sex, age. It's not allowed in the U.S. So none of our employers discriminate based on any of those things. I did see somebody ask about, can you apply for a dialysis position, or how do you apply for a dialysis position or a medical technologist position? Please go on our website and apply right now. We'd love to get you connected to a recruiter. We have an amazing dedicated dialysis recruiting team and dedicated medical technologist recruiters. We would absolutely love to help you. I will say for almost every single job, I've seen a couple of questions about experience. For almost every single position that we are hiring for right now, I think we mentioned a little bit earlier, we do require current experience. I think almost every employer wants to have current experience. If you have questions about your specific experience, super hard for us to answer accurately here without talking to you and like knowing more details about what you're doing now or what you've done in the past. But that's a really great reason to connect with your recruiter and have them talk through your experience. Like someone mentioned that they're currently working as a CNA, but they have a nursing degree. That's a really great one to take directly to your recruiter to talk through your experience and how that might translate to some options that we have.
Can I speak to that a little further? One of the things that we do as recruiters is try to match you best with the type of environment that you're currently working in. So I saw a question in the chat, if you return to bedside, what type of facility do you need to be in? What type of bed capacity? We're going to match you with the best hospital that matches what you're currently working in. So if you are working in a smaller, more rural hospital, maybe with a smaller bed capacity, your options are going to be more of the smaller hospitals that we work with. Now, if your goal in the U.S. is to work in a huge hospital, maybe a teaching hospital or something like that, it's important to make sure that that's the type of hospital you're working in. So what type of hospital you go back to for bedside really depends on where you'd like to see yourself in the U.S.
All right. So I think, there's been a couple of questions about H-1B visa. Do you want to talk about that, Kelsey?
Yeah, absolutely. H-1B is a great option that lots of people are considering right now because of visa retrogression. We have hired nurses through the H-1B process previously, and we hope to continue to do so. Right now, the biggest qualification that you will need to be eligible for that, aside from current bedside experience and NCLEX, is to have a completed visa screen in order to interview. Now, our RN positions for EB3 don't require this. Most people do their visa screen later on in the immigration process, so it's not required at time of interview. But for H-1B, it is, because the H-1B process moves much faster than the EB3 process, and so we need to make sure that you've already taken your English exam and you have your visa screen prior to interviewing. So if H-1B is the direction that you're hoping to move in, these are some steps that you can start taking while waiting for those hospital opportunities. We continue to work with hospitals and are hoping to get more openings for H-1B as well.
A couple of other questions that I've seen, someone asked about if my wife is working as a cook at the hospital, can my recruiter help get a job with that? And the answer is we can't help, but I think your employer will be able to help once you get to the U.S. Almost all positions will be posted on their website, so you can go and look and see what is available. Almost every hospital or facility will have support positions available, whether it's a long-term care facility or a hospital or acute rehab. There are so many needs that I feel confident that you will be able to find a position for a spouse We also have some employers, like I think Genesis Health is one of these, an example of this, where they have some connections at other places outside of the hospital system as well, and they're happy to partner with you to find a great place for your spouse. So I think your employer will probably be the right person to do that.
But your spouse will obtain a green card just like you. So once they're here in the US and they've got that green card, they can apply for job openings just like anyone else here in the US. They won't have to require sponsorship through the employer. They can start applying to jobs once they're here in the US.
Yeah. So maybe the last thing is I've seen several questions about retrogression, right? That's a hot topic. And stay tuned. Next week, Ron Hoppy is going to do a webinar about retrogression and the current state of retrogression, what it may or may not do for the rest of the year. He's going to partner with an immigration attorney. So please sign up for that and make sure to attend that to learn all the details. I think that right now, retrogression is doing exactly what it's done since it started, since we got back in retrogression. The timeline for processing for our EB3 visas for RNs is about 18 to 24 months. I think before retrogression, it was 15 to 18 months. So it's really not that far off from where it was previously. And I think, just staying patient in the process is what's really important. Getting a petition filed as soon as you can and you find the right employer. That's really important. And then, no one knows exactly what it's going to do. I mean, we wish there's lots of immigration attorneys who will give you a prediction. But the demand for international work visas for employers in the U.S. has never been greater. And I expect that's going to continue. So there's still many visa applicants.
One final thing to add from my side is I've seen lots of questions about, I just passed the NCLEX, who can I reach out to? I'd love to get in contact with you guys. If you haven't already, this is your first time joining us, please apply on our website. If you go to healthstaff.org, there's a big apply now button at the top. You can submit your resume. Our recruiters would love to start working with you. If you've already applied and maybe you haven't heard back from somebody, maybe our emails aren't getting to you, send us an email at recruiting@healthstaff.org. We want to make sure that your application is seen and we work with you. As you've seen on this call, we have a team of amazing recruiters that would be happy to support you in your process. Even if you have questions, you think maybe you're not qualified yet, but you still would like to talk with somebody, please reach out to us. We would love to continue working with you.
Yeah. And I think Kelsey mentioned earlier, this is a great journey to go along on with a friend or family member or colleague. We also have a great referral program. So please make sure to refer your friends. Our referral program pays $250 once the person's petition is approved, or actually is filed.
Yeah.
And so it's a great way for you to bring your friends and family and colleagues along with you, but also make a little extra cash along the way. Thank you so much to everybody for joining us. This has been really great. We appreciate your time. Thank you for your questions. If we somehow missed your question, please apply. Make sure that you connect to a recruiter, and we will be so happy to answer them. We hope everyone has a great evening or morning, remaining rest of your day, and we look forward to connecting with you again soon.